Markets are going to boom, the stock is going to boom, the country is going to boom.
Tonight on The Story, a nosedive on the stock market today after President Trump declared
Liberation Day
for American trade.
It's our declaration of economic independence.
International shockwaves as nearly every country in the world faces double-digit tariffs.
Yesterday's actions by the U.S. administration will rupture the global economy.
The Trump administration says it will be good for Americans.
You're going to see American production start to rise and finally be fair.
But local businesses are not so sure.
The logistics of moving manufacturing from a foreign country into the U.S. is not something that can be done over the short run.
And what could it mean for the average American?
The average tariff is going to be about 25% and could cost the average family as much as $5,000 a year.
Here's the story. We begin tonight with tariff turmoil. President Trump yesterday confidently announcing a minimum 10% tariff on all imports and a much higher percent for certain countries. But a day later, so today, the stock market had its worst day in nearly 5 years. The tumble on Wall Street described as a shock not seen since COVID wreaked havoc on the market in 2020. Though President Trump says to hang tight, that this is all worth it. Here he is today talking with reporters about the fallout while aboard Air Force One.
Well, I mean, it's to be expected where this is a patient that was very sick. We really inherited a terrible economy, as you know. The operation's over, and now we let it settle in.
We want to get to Tim Gordon in the newsroom tonight. We want to focus in on the local impact of these tariffs. You know, we know they're expected to affect everything from electronics to cars and coffee and our retirement investments. I mean, today in the car, my photographer even was telling me his account is not looking so good. So talk to me, Tim. What are you hearing? Who have you talked to?
Yeah, Blair, you know, for a lot of us, this type of economic volatility that we're seeing today makes us think of one thing first, our retirement investments. You probably heard it before on days like this. Don't look at your 401k. But beyond that, what else should we consider? Today I talked with Linda Carroll. She's a certified financial planner who has seen the market and her clients' peace of mind go up and down. And this, no doubt, is a big down.
I think the biggest thing, what we talk to our clients a lot about is, just kind of, take a breath, right? This is the markets really just trying to sort through this new information and figure out how to move forward.
Okay, but Tim, uncertainty is not really what people want to be feeling, especially when it comes to their money. So does she have any other advice on how to navigate this?
Yeah, Blair, you're absolutely right. And she says, really, to make sure you have a diverse investment portfolio in your 401ks or IRAs or individual investments. That includes having some stake in international companies not reliant on the U.S. economy. That's smart. Carroll says, despite the stress, stay the course. Long term, it's still your best bet.
I truly do believe we're going to find our way through this and come out the other side. But yeah, there could be some, short-term volatility and uncertainty as this starts to play out and everybody can figure out what to do next.
Okay, and so we know there's still plenty of uncertainty about what tomorrow or the next few weeks or even months are going to bring us. If you have questions or concerns, it's good to check in with a financial advisor. They might be able to hopefully reassure you a bit and suggest changes to your portfolio and your plan, if that helps. Blair?
All right, Tim Gordon in the newsroom tonight. Tim, thank you. Now, we also know these tariffs could impact the local construction industry. So our team talked with the head of local Associated General Contractors chapter. They represent commercial contractors. Now, they believe these tariffs are going to make it more difficult for them to get the materials they need. Listen.
But I've been around this industry a long time, and my biggest worry is that what is being communicated to the public as wanting to be helpful will actually have the opposite effect.
Well, time will tell as we're just one day in, but it has sure been a bumpy start. So tell us, what are your thoughts on all this tariff news? Do you think the president is making the right move here? Why or why not? Email the story at kgw.com or call and leave us a voicemail, 503-226-5090.
Don't allow your past to keep you from having a better future.
Today, that man graduated from Washington County's drug deflection program. That's when people are given the choice between treatment over jail when they're caught in possession of hard drugs like meth or fentanyl. You know, we've talked a lot about deflection on this show, especially late last year when programs around the metro were just getting started. So now it's time for a check-in, starting with that man you just heard from. I sat down with him to hear his success story today and his message to those still on the streets. Homelessness for Robert Mahoney lasted 8 months.
I was in a rough stage in my life.
He was first on the streets of Portland before migrating to Hillsboro this past fall.
Every day I had no real purpose, no real direction, no real goals.
Robert used meth and was eventually arrested for possession in September. That arrest happened around the same time Washington County's drug deflection program started. That's when the Oregon law change went into effect, recriminalizing small amounts of hard drugs. Counties could then offer what's called deflection, the option of treatment over jail for people caught solely with possession, people like Robert.
Because I wanted to get out. I didn't know, I couldn't find the resources, and in my psychosis state due to the drug use, I wasn't thinking clearly. But once I was able to, somebody comes along, guardian angel, whatnot. These programs, they point you in that direction, and it's your choice. You have the keys to your own shackles.
Having that moment of that first interaction is, I think, one of the most important parts of my job.
Nick Haskell is also in recovery and leads a deflection outreach team at 4D Recovery in Hillsboro. When police come across someone who qualifies, they text Nick.
I get out there as quickly as I can, meet with them. That's where my outreach takes place.
We watched that happen to this man in Multnomah County on the streets of Old Town back in early September.
I don't know if I want to do it or not.
Why?
Because I want to be out here with my family.
They're not necessarily ready to let go of that security, that a lot of us find in using substances.
Yes, sir. It works.
Since September in Washington County, about 80 people have qualified for deflection. 3 have graduated from the up to 6-month program, with another set to finish next week. So while it's not the answer for everyone,
you can't expect 100% of people for it to work.
Those at 4D Recovery say that doesn't mean it's out of reach.
The architects of 4002, which recriminalized drugs, they built in a treatment-first approach all through sort of the intervention process. So that, let's say 80% right now that's not getting it, a high percentage of them are eventually going to get pushed into treatment through the criminal justice system.
It's very much possible. But you got to commit to the clean, stay focused on the progress, small goals to hit the big, and eventually you will get there.
Now, when it comes to deflection in Multnomah County, the most recent data from the end of last year shows just over 200 people were offered deflection. 141 of them decided to move forward with that process, but just 34 of those people completed deflection. And completion in Multnomah County is defined as the person accessing at least one service referral within 30 days. And here's a look at the services that those 34 people used to complete deflection in Multnomah County. Housing, peer services, and outpatient treatment topped the list. Oregon lawmakers could soon make it easier to force someone into mental health treatment. A bill to adjust state standards for civil commitment was discussed this afternoon. Advocates say changes are needed to get people help before they're dangerous to themselves or others. Opponents fear it could be a slippery slope when it comes to personal rights. It's a topic investigative reporter Evan Watson has covered extensively over the past 3 years.
Oregon lawmakers are considering major changes to the state's civil commitment laws, making forced mental health treatment a more accessible option for people in crisis. For years, family members of people with severe mental illness, like Kristen Benton, have called for change.
The only option to get help here is and have someone be in a safe spot to save your family and them is to be in jail.
District attorneys, including Washington County's Kevin Barton, say Oregon's strict standards have effectively criminalized severe mental illness.
The process waits for a crime to occur, and then the criminal justice system has to step in as the system of last resort, and that often is the only pathway someone has toward some level of mental health treatment. That is an absurd way of approaching this issue.
Even Governor Tina Kotek names reform as one of her priorities.
Why is it okay that we watch very ill people harm themselves because we are unwilling or unable to get them the health care they so desperately need?
The proposed bill would redefine dangerousness, allowing a judge to consider a person's past behavior and the risk of danger to themselves or others in the near future when considering a civil commitment. Forced treatment is rare. Leaders with Disability Rights Oregon say that's for good reason. It takes away a person's right to make their own health care choices. DRO agrees that Oregon's mental health system is broken, but says expanding community treatment options needs to be first priority.
Everybody wants a fix that can happen tomorrow that's very simple, and it feels like involuntary treatment is the answer. But the reality is that we need to build out our voluntary treatment.
People should be able to get care in their own home and community. They shouldn't have to wait until they're locked up or sent away to the state hospital, sometimes hundreds of miles from where they live.
Chris Bonoff, executive director of NAMI Oregon, believes in that too. He says any change to forced treatment standards must be met with investment in community treatment options and hospital beds, and other bills address that. But it's clear to him that Oregon needs civil commitment reform for the most severe cases.
It's ridiculous that all of us might look at somebody and say, you know what, it's time to intervene here, and we can't. And so we have to solve that problem.
Evan Watson joins me now. So Evan, what did you note from testimony in Salem today?
Yeah, Blair, we've seen efforts to change civil commitment laws in recent years, but they've gone mostly nowhere dying committee. This year's effort seems to have more of a push behind it. Among the people that I heard testify today were judges, doctors, medical providers, lawmakers, supportive housing providers, the First Lady, Amy Kotek Wilson, and of course, people with lived experience of mental illness and their family members. Among them, one that the story viewers might recognize is Hunter Graham. We shared Hunter Graham's story last year, and he shared his testimony in front of lawmakers today. In talking with Hunter Graham last year, he talked about his son, Austin Graham, in a severe mental illness crisis who tragically killed his own mother, Hunter's wife. Austin is now getting treatment in the state hospital and getting better. Because of Oregon standards, the Grahams couldn't force him into care before it was too late, which is part of what Hunter shared today as well. It's important to note, though, as well, this is not a bill with unanimous consent. People testified against this as well, worried about the rollback of personal rights to make health care decisions and also the many side effects that civil commitment and forced medication can have. But interesting to watch the pace pick up on this topic in this year particularly.
Yeah, very interesting. And also, the fact is a civil commitment, it's a last resort. So, while this would change state regulations, it doesn't necessarily mean it will be widely used, right?
That's correct. Yeah, it would be changing the requirements for dangerous to others or dangerous to self, adding definitions in there. But very few people reach the stage of civil commitment at all. And everyone on this topic supporting or opposing this measure seems to say that, hey, we want to invest upstream, the voluntary treatment options, the other kind of beds and capacity. We need to do a lot more of that. That's going to affect many, many more people, but it's for those most severe cases, the most extreme cases, oftentimes the ones that we end up talking about here on the news. Those are the cases that medical providers and others are saying, please, we need the resources to get them help because we can see this being bad and we want to step in before it gets there.
All right, Evan Watson, thanks so much. Yep. Well, still ahead, a lawmaker wants to send more money to help kids and teens fight addiction. But where she wants the money to come from has got beer and winemakers upset. The proposal for a new tax on alcohol sales. That's when the story returns. Well, it was a packed house in Salem last night as dozens of people showed up to testify on a bill that would impose higher taxes on beer and wine in Oregon. If it passes, House Bill 3197 would tax alcohol when it's sold to consumers, starting at 2% next year and going up to 8% by 2032. The money would go to fund addiction programs for kids. The bill was sponsored by Representative Tanya Sanchez, who represents North and Northeast Portland.
It is no secret that I have been working on a beer and wine tax for many, many years in this legislature because I truly believe that we need to get to a place where we can actually fund some of the really deep issues that we have with addictions and the struggles that many people in our community have.
But there was quite a bit of opposition to the bill. In fact, the vast majority of people who testified last night don't want it to pass. Many of them work in Oregon's famous craft beer and wine industry, like Lisa Allen.
Oregon's 300-plus breweries create about 50,000 jobs for Oregonians throughout the state. Many brewery pubs and tap rooms are community gathering places where they host club meetings, birthday parties, nonprofit fundraisers, and just give folks a spot to meet up with friends. We give back to our local communities in the form of goods and funds to help local nonprofits, as well as help drive tourism throughout the state. Inflation, supply chain issues, and a decrease in visitors have been tough during the last few years, and now we have tariffs to add to that list. Most craft beer is a luxury item and is already on the more expensive side. Adding a point of sales tax to beer will drive the consumer to purchase cheap commodity beer, all of which is produced out of state, that small Oregon breweries just can't compete with cost-wise.
But supporters of the bill said more money needs to go into helping kids fight addiction. They say the system is broken and families often have trouble finding the right resources.
We are in the midst of a youth addiction crisis in Oregon, and the lack of sustainable funding for prevention, treatment, and recovery services has left too many young people without hope or help. House Bill 3197 is an opportunity to change that. By implementing a gradual and reasonable tax on alcoholic beverages, this bill will generate much needed funding to expand access to youth addiction recovery programs, peer mentorship, and prevention efforts across the state.
But a Republican lawmaker says the state already has enough money going toward the addiction crisis. It's just not spent wisely.
It's my opinion this legislature needs to stop asking Oregonians to be their ATM machine every time we have a new idea. Instead, we should do what Oregonians do when they have limited funds. They prioritize from most important to least important. I think $250 million ought to be adequate to fund addiction services properly. In my view, the problem is not money, but rather with OHA and no clear strategy using best practices and accountability how they're spending the money.
The bill is still bouncing around in House committees and does not yet have a full House hearing or vote scheduled just yet. We'll keep you posted. We're back right after this. Our series with the president of Microsoft continues tonight. The company is celebrating its 50th anniversary as Brad Smith sits down with Joyce Taylor to go on the record, reflecting on 5 decades of innovation, the challenges ahead, a world with AI, and the type of tech to take us into the future.
The most amazing thing for a tech company that hits 50 years is just the fact that it managed to do that. I think our most transformational accomplishment has been to constantly change.
Microsoft is making an $80 billion investment in AI. So how do you think that's going to impact the global landscape, particularly with EU regulations, competition with China?
What it really reflects is our belief that AI is fundamental to the future, the economic competitiveness of the United States, but really for humanity, the ability to discover new drugs, to improve healthcare, to advance science, to change the way we learn.
When you say AI, some people are so excited. I use AI in my everyday work. Some people are terrified. How does the everyday user differentiate between what is accurate with AI, which we would assume is almost everything, and what is not?
One is AI is still a relatively young technology when it comes to generative AI. It will continue to get better, but don't turn off your brain. Continue to think and ask, does this make sense? If not, then ask another question, and you're probably going to get the right answer.
And I believe Microsoft's training 2.5 million Americans in AI skills. So how will you address job displacement?
Well, I think this is going to be one of the most important topics we'll all talk about in the 5 and 10 and frankly 25 years ahead. I don't actually believe that people run as much of a risk of losing their job to AI as they might run a risk of losing their job to someone who knows how to use AI.
When it comes to environmental sustainability, what is the company doing, particularly as it relates to large-scale data centers?
We're doing this work with 3 principles in mind. Number 1, we need to invest, and we are, to bring new sources of electricity online to provide the power that we need. Number 2, we need to invest in renewable or carbon-free energy, wind, solar, nuclear. And third, we have to manage this so that if there's improvements that are needed to the grid, for example, that we pay that price.
So let's reflect on 50 years. Is there one achievement or 2 that you are most proud of as you look back over your own 31 plus years with the company?
There's a lot of years that were hard. From a broad perspective, go back a decade. You know, Microsoft was not at the absolute forefront when people were talking about phones. They were talking about Samsung and Apple. There are very few times in the history of technology when a company is able to really define some technological eras, slip, and then come back. And I think that is a testament to ingenuity, to perseverance, to resilience, and fundamentally to innovation. But the other thing that I feel so good about is the community orientation of this company. It started with Bill Gates, it started with his parents. We created not just a program, but a culture where people give to the community. 80% of our employees in Washington State donate either time or money to nonprofits in this state. That's an extraordinarily high percentage. We generate about $125 million per year to almost 5,000 nonprofits in Washington State.
What are your aspirations for Microsoft into the future?
We should want to do fundamentally 3 things. Number 1, we have to remain at the forefront of innovation. Number 2, I think we have to be a force for good. You know, that we not only want to create technology that people use, but we create technology that makes the world a better place. And I think we can do both. And third, I feel a huge sense of responsibility, as I think all of us who are leaders here today do, for our role in Washington State. We've helped build an economy that is in part very dependent on our industry. If we do those 3 things together, then hey, I'd say the next 25 years, they should be our best 25 years, and that should be our goal.
Well, that is the end of our show, folks. Thanks so much for watching. The good stuff is coming your way next. And don't forget, everyone has a story to tell. Have a great Thursday night. I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.